Welcome to ICAN Intelligence. I am your examiner, your lecturer, and your mentor. Before we jump in, please take a quick second to like this explainer, share it with your peers, and subscribe to our channel. Look, I totally get it. The sheer volume of the international public sector accounting standards can feel really overwhelming. But today, we're going to replace that anxiety with absolute technical confidence. I'm going to guide you step by step to total mastery of Chapter 29, covering IPS Group B. We are leaving absolutely nothing to chance today. Here's our roadmap for today's session. We'll start with a big picture overview, then dive into leases and investment property, move on to PPE and provisions, tackle asset impairments and a few others, hit some real past questions for active recall, and finish up with a final recap. All right, Section 1, Big Picture Overview, the Examiner's Blueprint. Let's step back for a second. Why does IPSAS Group B matter so much in your ICAN exams? These standards govern how massive public sector resources, we're talking assets often worth trillions of naira globally, are recognized, measured, and disclosed. Now pause and ask yourself, if this chapter pops up in the exam, what is the examiner really testing? Well, I'll tell you. We're testing your ability to distinguish between easily confused rules, apply exact recognition criteria without cutting corners, and correctly classify complex public sector assets and liabilities. Precision is literally your best friend here. Okay, moving right into Section 2, Leases, which is IPSAS 43, and investment property, IPSAS 16. Let's start with a crucial definition. According to your ICAN pack, a finance lease is a lease that transfers substantially all the risks and rewards incidental to ownership of an underlying asset. You need to memorize this exact definition. A huge, and I mean huge, student mistake is leaving out the words substantially all. If you drop those words, you lose the mark. It's really that simple. On the flip side, an operating lease does not transfer these risks and rewards, which means those lease payments are just recognized as an expense on a straight-line basis over the lease term. So, how do we actually classify a finance lease? There are 5 specific features you absolutely must know. Number 1, ownership transfers to the lessee by the end of the lease. Number 2, a bargain purchase option exists. Number 3, the lease term is for the major part of the asset's economic life. Number 4, at inception, the present value of the minimum lease payments amounts to substantially all the fair value of the leased asset. And number 5, the leased assets are of such a specialized nature that only the lessee can use them without major modifications. Now listen to me closely. If this appears as a theory question, how should you answer it? You must list these items fully. Never, ever just write a few and add etc. State every single one. Next up is IPSAS 16, investment property. This is property held to earn rentals, for capital appreciation, or both. It is specifically not owner-occupied property. When it comes to measurement after recognition, you've got 2 choices, the cost model or the fair value model. So why pick one over the other? Well, the cost model, using cost less accumulated depreciation, is simple and objective, right? But its big limitation is that it might severely understate the property's true current value. The fair value model gives you highly relevant current market info, but the downside is it's subjective and costly to determine. And here is a trap students fall into all the time. If you use the fair value model, there is no depreciation. None. Changes in fair value go immediately into surplus or deficit. Do not mistakenly depreciate a fair value investment property in the exam. Take a quick mental snapshot of this summary. Locking in these core principles right now is going to massively lower your cognitive load for the exam. Just remember, IPSAS 43 is all about right-of-use assets and substance over form, while IPSAS 16 is about properties generating rentals or capital appreciation. Let's keep the momentum going with Section 3, Property, Plant, and Equipment under IPSAS 45, and Provisions under IPSAS 19. Under IPSAS 19, a provision has a very elegant, simple definition: a liability of uncertain timing or amount. It sounds simple, but please don't confuse this with a standard payable, like a trade creditor. The uncertainty, whether it's when it'll be paid or exactly how much will be paid, is the absolutely critical keyword here. To actually recognize a provision on the Statement of Financial Position, you have to pass a very strict test. 3 conditions. 1. An entity has a present obligation. This can be legal or constructive, from a past event. 2. It is probable that an outflow of resources embodying economic benefits or service potential will be required to settle it. And 3, a reliable estimate can be made of the amount. You have to satisfy all 3. If even one of these fails, no provision. Period. Which naturally brings us to a trap the examiner absolutely loves setting. What if those 3 conditions aren't met? Then we're looking at contingent liabilities and contingent assets. A contingent liability is a possible obligation. It is never recognized in the financial statements. You only disclose it in the notes, unless the chance of an outflow is totally remote. A contingent asset, on the other hand, is a possible asset. Again, it is not recognized, and you only disclose it if an inflow of economic benefits is deemed probable. Here is your quick wrap-up for Section 3. For PPE under IPSAS 45, which replaced IPS 17, by the way, you carry it at cost less depreciation, or you use the revaluation model. Under revaluation, you carry it at fair value at the date of revaluation less subsequent depreciation, and any revaluation surplus goes straight to net assets or equity. For provisions under IPSAS 19, your measurement must always be the best estimate of the expenditure needed to settle that present obligation. All right, Section 4, we're going to look at asset impairments, agriculture, and intangibles. We actually have 2 impairment standards. IPSAS 21 is for non-cash generating assets, and IPSAS 26 is for cash generating assets. So what's the big difference? It all comes down to the primary objective, your intent. IPSAS 26 cash-generating assets are held specifically to generate a commercial return. IPSAS 21 non-cash-generating assets are held primarily to deliver service potential. Think of a free public school or a government hospital. Examiners love testing impairment numerically, so let's walk through the logic of this calculation step by step. Step 1. At each reporting date, assess if there's any indication of impairment. Step 2. If there is an indication, estimate the recoverable amount. For a cash-generating asset, this is the higher of its fair value less cost to sell and its value in use. Step 3. Compare that to your carrying amount. Step 4. If and only if the carrying amount is higher than the recoverable amount, you recognize an impairment loss. The formula is literally just impairment loss equals carrying amount minus recoverable amount. You reduce the carrying amount, and that loss goes straight to surplus or deficit. We also need to touch on IPSAS 27 and 31. For IPSAS 27, agriculture, biological assets and agricultural produce are measured at their fair value less cost to sell at the point of harvest. The only exception, if fair value can't be measured reliably on initial recognition, then you fall back to cost less depreciation. For IPSAS 31, intangible assets, the definition is an identifiable, non-monetary asset without physical substance. But here is a massive limitation you need to remember. Internally generated goodwill can never be recognized, period. Also, if you want to capitalize internally generated development costs, you have to meet very strict criteria: technical feasibility, intention to complete, ability to generate future economic benefits, and reliable measurement of expenditure. Don't gloss over these. Examiners test them all the time. Section 5. Let's see how all this theory translates into real exam performance with some active recall. Take a look at this. In November 2022, an 8-mark theory question asked for features of both operating and finance leases. Notice how they explicitly ask for a specific number. You have to hit that number. To answer the operating lease part, you'd clearly state that they do not transfer substantially all risks and rewards, and that the payments are recognized as an expense on a straight-line basis. And for the finance lease portion, a really common student mistake is just writing down vague conversational descriptions. To lock in those 8 marks, you must use the exact authoritative phrases we covered earlier. Say ownership transfer, say bargain purchase option, say specialized nature, and explicitly state the present value formula. Do not summarize. Give the examiner the exact technical terms. Here's a very recent one from May 2024 asking for internal and external indicators of asset impairment. To approach this correctly, you need to clearly separate your list into 2 buckets. Internal sources would be things like evidence of physical damage, obsolescence, or internal reports showing that the asset's economic performance is just worse than expected. External sources would be a significant unexpected decline in market value or adverse changes in the legal or technological environment. All right, Section 6. Take a deep breath. You are doing fantastic. You've got the theory down. Now let's just anchor the absolute must-knows so you can execute with calm, cool confidence on exam day. These are your golden rules, the principles you must be able to recall under pressure. Number 1, a finance lease transfers substantially all risks and rewards. Number 2, a provision demands a present obligation, a probable outflow, and a reliable estimate. Number 3, an impairment loss is strictly the amount by which the carrying amount is greater than the recoverable amount. Number 4, under the fair value model for investment property, changes do not mean depreciation. They go straight to surplus or deficit. Do yourself a favor, write these out tonight before you go to sleep. Thank you so much for studying with ICAN Intelligence today. I am incredibly proud of your focus. Please take a second to like this masterclass, subscribe to our channel, and comment below with any areas of this chapter that you're still finding tricky so we can support you. And don't forget to share this with your fellow ICAN students. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought. If you were handed a massive government's financial statements tomorrow, could you spot the hidden liabilities and impaired assets buried deep in the notes? With what we covered today, I bet you could. Keep studying and stay confident.